Hey, what is up, six-figure land flippers? In this session, we're going to talk about how to interview a title company. Now, when you follow my model, the relationship you develop with your closing agent is of utmost importance. Okay, it's really critical to begin these relationships or begin this process being able to partner with title companies. It's really, really critical to being able to achieve these ridiculous profits that are coming in. But okay, first this week I want to tell you I closed one. It was for 22,000. Woo woo! Celebrating! I was so excited. I'm kissing every dollar that comes through the door. And you know what? It's important to celebrate because what gets celebrated gets replicated. All right, so this deal was signed. Now, this is a little bit of a sad story, okay? I first signed up with this seller a deal to buy his property in March of 2021. Okay, today it is April 2022. We just closed this week. Okay, so this is a bit of a story. And I knew at the time that this could either be a huge hit or it could just sit there, which now we know it basically just sat there. So it was super close to a 4-lane highway, like a US highway. It was just under 5 acres, which is a little smaller than I normally go for. But this size property in this particular area is very sought after property. All right. So it was zoned R2 residential in that area. It was in a flood zone. Other areas around it were in that same flood zone, and there were properties there, so I wasn't worried. It did have city electric, sewer, and water. There was no survey or perk test, and access was via a dirt road. Okay, there was no paved road to get there, but it did have a legal right-of-way. So, and this corridor where the U.S. highway was located, it was near some major water. So it was an attraction. Like that area was a well-known area for water activities. So I thought it would be good to turn, maybe we had seen, I guess in some of the public records, the previous owner had tried to rezone it commercial. So we thought, well, maybe it would be good to turn it into like a storage space. And then based on the comps in the same city, we saw prices. We bought this property for, I think, around 32,000, and we were seeing prices that were 85, 95. $100,000 for 3 to 5 acre parcels in the past year in this area. So we averaged it out, and those averaged about 122,000 retail price. So I listed it for 89,000. I thought, what a great deal this would be for someone. But I did also recognize this would not be ideal because it's tucked away in the back, like it wasn't out on the main highway. So I was thinking, maybe I could get commercial investors who want to rezone this one. I mean, there's no hunting or live game allowed in this area, but it could have been good recreational. So anyway, a little bit about the sellers. So they were 3 kids who had inherited the property from their parents, and they had paid the taxes on it for many, many years. And they finally just said, you know what, they got my letter. They're like, it's time to sell. And one of their kids, there were 3 kids that inherited, one of them had already passed away. So there were 2 of that person's children now as heirs. So, you can see that it gets a little more complicated. And I just think they had no plans for the property, and they just wanted to get rid of it. So when they received my letter, they were super excited to be able to sell it and just, cash out and just be done with that chapter of their life. So as always, I put the property under contract to purchase with a closing date set for about 6 months out. So there was one person as my main point of contact on behalf of all the sellers. I think we had a total of 5 people who had to sign as a seller. And then once I checked out the property and felt like I could answer, all those questions that a buyer might know about it, I went ahead and put it on the MLS. Now, in this particular case, at the time I listed it, I was also working on about 30 other properties. I was in some phase of the process with 30 properties total. Like I just had a lot on my plate at the time, and I didn't have a ton of stuff outsourced. Or I guess I just didn't have everything outsourced, is what I should say. So I had all these properties in some phase of the process. So I just went ahead and hired a local real estate agent for the deal. Okay, so I had someone representing me as an agent. Now, that is a whole different story, and I can tell you more about that one later. But after the original 6-month agreement, I was really not getting any offers on it. So I dropped the price on it every few weeks. I extended the agreement with the seller for another 6 months. And by November, I had a prospective buyer who wanted to put a glamper dome on the property. I don't even know what that is, but ultimately they didn't think they could get it approved by the county. So they walked away. Then I had some buyers who made an offer, and then they wanted to withdraw the offer because after they talked to the county, they said they wouldn't let them use the easement the way they thought they were going to be able to use it. I don't even know what that was about. And then a third interested buyer said, you know what, there's little to no land, like literally above the water line. This is a flood zone property. So I was like, okay, well, eventually we received an offer for $65,000. And I was like, you know what? I can't sell this property. It's for some reason or another, it's not selling. I kept dropping the price. So finally I'm down to 65 and I'm like, oh, we have an offer for 65. Okay, great. Let's take it. And then the buyer backed out. I couldn't believe it. I was coming to closing and they backed out. And so they lost their earnest money, but whatever, they backed out. This is the roller coaster of the land business. So typically at this point, I'm going to ask myself, you know, would I buy this property? Like, is this a good risk? Ultimately, I decided, no, this is not a good risk. And so I let the seller know that I just couldn't make it work. And I listed a lot of those other objections I heard from those buyers when I was telling it. But a few months went by and the real estate agent contacted me again and said, you know, I still had that listed somewhere, I don't know where, and someone found it, and now I have another buyer. Would you consider selling it? It was an offer for $60,000, and I thought, oh no, you know, I let this one go. I don't have the buyer anymore. But you know, you see how the momentum of your marketing can stick around for a while, even after you've moved on. So I was like, well, yes, I'm still interested. And I had no idea what the seller had going on. So I said, I think I'm interested, but let me do some checking and I'll call you back. Of course, I went and called the seller immediately and said, you know, I remember you from when we were trying to buy your property, but I couldn't make it work. But now I do think I can make it work. Would you still consider selling it? And to my great blessing, he said, yes, I still want to sell it. And I was like, great. So I honored the original price, which I offered $32,000. I probably shouldn't have offered that much, but I had offered him $32,000. This offer was for $60,000. There were 2 agents involved. So I ended up making around $22,000. And I am celebrating that closing because that just shows you that stuff can happen. I mean, this was a long lead time to get to this closing, but you put your questions in the chat. If you have any questions about that deal, I'm just so grateful. I'm celebrating it because I want to replicate it. It's not the ideal way that it happens, but I'm not going to say, oh, sorry, babe, I only made 5 figures today. I'm not going to be sad about that, right? All right, let's go. Let's go. Thank you for that comment, Hayden. Welcome. All right, today I'm going to give you some tips on how to talk to the title company in order to determine whether or not they can help you achieve your goals. Does that sound like a good idea? Would anyone like to talk about that? So that begs the question though, do you know what your goals are? If you do, go ahead and put them in the chat. I want to know what your goals are. Okay, specifically what your goals are. What are they? Now, if you know your exact goals, that's what I want you to put in there right here, right now. Go ahead and do it. If you do not know what your goals are off the top of your head. I want you to stop everything you're doing right now and decide. Type it in the chat what you want. How much do you want to make? And when do you plan to start making it? Because to have wealth is nothing more than just a decision. I decided, okay? Now I target deals that give me 100% return on my investment and $20,000 per deal. So with that plan, how many deals do you need to make before you start getting to the income number that you want, where you might want to quit your job or switch gears from one way of doing things to this way? You know, when you're working so hard and you're making good money, but then you're all tied up in that job 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then there's just not enough extra time to really live your dream, right? I remember my husband sold his business, and after leading it for the new company for a couple of years, he was abruptly let go. You know, they had a new vision for the future, and he just wasn't part of it. There was no notice, there was no pay, and I literally panicked. You know that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you know you've always been successful, you know how to do stuff, you take personal responsibility for stuff, you're a leader, you're out there doing what you need to do. It's like anguish when something like this happens outside your control. How many of you can relate to that? It's that feeling in the pit of your stomach, you know, when you have to do something about all those expenses, but you also want more than just enough to get by, and you also want some freedom, right? And so I guess I'm saying if we're not going to live out our dreams like right now, like when are we going to do it? What is stopping us from doing it right now? Has anyone ever felt that way, by the way? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. I see a bunch of chats. Thank you. See if I can read them in order. I can't read the really long ones, so try to keep them short if you can. All right, Hayden said 6 figures /M, is that a month? 6 figures a month gross flipping land. Wow. I'm doing that, Hayden. You can do it too. You can do it. It's totally doable. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Well, I just wondered if y'all have ever tried to do that. If you think about it, Hayden, to get to 6 figures, you know, the way that I'm doing it, basically 100% return on investment, $20,000 per deal, minimum profit. Those are my minimum standards to make a deal. So I need 5 deals to hit 6 figures. So then it's like, okay, well, how much marketing do I need to do to get a deal? And that is the trick. That is the trick. You just decide, and then you start taking the actions that are going to lead you. And it's just math at that point. You know what I'm talking about? All right, well, we came here today to talk about title companies. So when you purchase real estate or flip it, whatever you're doing with real estate, it's essential to be aware of 3 things, right? You need to know if there are any liens or old debts secured by this property. Were there any omitted heirs? Like if their name should have been on the inheritance, but for some reason it wasn't there. It was just omitted. There's also mistakes made in the public record, and there's just all kinds of different title issues that can be going on. And without a good title search, there's really not a way to know if there are any liens on the property that you're purchasing. So if there are, because you would be responsible for paying them since you're going to become the property's rightful owner, right? So when I'm talking to closing agents, I'm asking them, do you work with real estate investors? Are you familiar with wholesaling? Because guys, even though I'm not technically wholesaling, it's important that a title company kind of understands how wholesaling works. Then I ask them, have they ever done double closes? And then since I'll be doing so many transactions with you, you know, will you give me a discount? Sometimes they'll give you a 25 to 30% off closing cost discount if you do both sides of the deal with them, or if you bring them multiple deals. All right, so those are some of the things that you want to ask the title company. You want to show them the contract that you're using, to make sure that they can work with it, like that the law in this state allows for me to do a deal this way. Ask them, are disclosures required? Like, if I do a double close using the end buyer's money, is it required in this state for that to be disclosed to the buyer and the seller? Just have an understanding of what's required and what they've done before with other investors, and have they ever done it this way? And that is how you decide on who you're going to work with. And I would go ahead and do that before you start marketing to the area.